Good morning, everyone. I'm David Pankratz, your MLA for Waverley, and I am absolutely thrilled to be here with all of you today to announce an initiative our government is incredibly proud of. And on behalf of the province, I want to honor the sacredness and importance of this land and of the ancestors that once walked where we are standing today. The Anishinaabe, the Inanewak, the Dene, the Dakota, the Métis, the Inuit, and Anishinaabe nations have all paved the way to what is now known as Manitoba, home to all treaty people. And the reason that we always share this information with you is that it is a reminder of our treaty histories and the original homelands of these nations, which have become home to all of us here today. Now, as a first responder, I have seen firsthand the realities for folks who are houseless and what they face. And that's why I am so incredibly proud that I am a part of a government that sees such an urgent need to act after 7.5 years of underfunding and cuts to social and affordable housing. Now, our approach as a government is rooted in the belief that we need to help vulnerable Manitobans, and we do that by meeting people where they're at. And I'm so proud to say that progress is being made to end chronic homelessness in our province. More than 1,200 Manitoba families have been connected to housing over the last year, giving them back the freedom to live in safety, dignity, and respect. We're helping vulnerable Manitobans facing gender-based violence, struggling with addictions, or those who find themselves on the brink of being houseless find a path to housing. Now, at the core of this is a really simple idea. It's the idea that when people need help or are ready to turn their lives around, their government should be there ready to lend a hand. It's our belief that all people in Manitoba deserve an avenue that gets them from the streets to a place that they can call their home. With more to say on that and on today's announcement, I'd like to invite to the podium the Honourable Premier Kinew.
Thanks, Dave. Nice job. Just mine. I want to build off David Pankratz's land acknowledgement and acknowledge that it is the descendants of those Indigenous nations that we invoke in the opening who are disproportionately affected by homelessness in our province. And we have a responsibility to serve them and everyone else who, by virtue or victim of history, personal trauma, or poverty, ends up living in a tent. And we're here to say that as a province, the people of Manitoba are no longer satisfied with having people live in tents. Today is a day where we commit to a turning point. We're going to work together and ensure that everybody has a place to call home, and importantly, that you have the addictions and mental health services to succeed in living with a roof over your head. So there's two specific announcements that we're making here today. First, we're taking the covers off our provincial homelessness strategy. It's called Your Way Home. And speaking to people who've been living in tents, people who've been out on the streets struggling with addictions or mental health issues or that intergenerational trauma, we are committed to working with you to help you find your way home. And the other big announcement today is that we're hiring one of the MVPs from the sector, Tessa Blaikie Whitecloud, who is going to be the quarterback for this strategy at the provincial level. She will be joining the provincial government, and I want to get the title right here because it's very, very important, as the Premier Senior Advisor on Ending Chronic Homelessness. I want to ask the people of Manitoba, how do you feel when you drive along Main Street? How do you feel when you drive down South Pembina? We drive through communities like Brandon or Thompson or so many other places, and you see somebody who is in the grips of psychosis brought on by substance use. How do you feel when you see fires, either in person or being shared on social media for people who live in encampments? How do you feel when you see tents underneath bridges or in parks? And regardless of how you answer that question, I know that the thing that everybody agrees on coming from those feelings is that we can and we should be doing better. This is a rich country, this place that we love so much called Canada. This is a beautiful province full of wonderful, helping people. And yet for far too long, people have been left behind. They've been left behind without housing. They've been left behind with mental health services. They've been left behind without a path to stay alive and make their way out of an addictions crisis. Speaking to you as somebody who was given a second chance at life, I want to tell you that it is so important that we work together to address this challenge of chronic homelessness. I made good on a second chance, and I have a deep, abiding faith in the people of this province that when given the chance, you can make good on a second chance as well too. And so contained within the pages of this important document, we have a strategy that moves people out from encampment to encampment over a 30-day period into housing, up through a ladder of housing from social housing onto the affordable and market-based rents, and importantly, ensures that they stay there because they have the supports that they need to be able to succeed. So we're ensuring that there's the investments in the services, we're ensuring that there's the investments in the housing, we're ensuring that there's the investments in the people, so that we start over a period between now and 2031 to ensure that no one in Manitoba is chronically homeless again. I want to thank Mayor Gillingham for his participation. The partnership between the province and the city is going to be absolutely essential, because the city, among many other important functions, is often that first point of contact and will be leading so much of this important enterprise. At the same time, we've got wonderful partners in the non-for-profits, the people who've been out there on the streets for so many years and decades helping our relatives out there. And Tessa's partnership and joining the team helps to ensure that we can bring all those voices together, all the people with the good hearts and the strong views that characterize this sector, to be able to work together and to collaborate and make a difference. And so we're bringing forward this Team Manitoba approach so that we can finally turn the corner when it comes to the challenge of chronic homelessness in Manitoba. And hopefully, after a few years of working together and working with you, the folks who are out there on the streets, when I ask Manitobans in the future, how do you feel when you drive up Main Street or down Pembina or to Brandon or Thompson? Hopefully the answer will be, I feel proud. I feel proud of the city and proud of the province. So with that, I want to say miigwech, merci, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Premier. I would like to now call to the podium the Minister of Housing, Addictions, Homelessness and Mental Health, Bernadette Smith.
Thank you so much, David. First of all, I want to thank our Premier, of course, and Mayor Gillingham for being here, and of course Tessa Blaikie, and so many others for being here. Too many Manitobans are facing complex challenges, and who must make impossible choices. Our relatives often sacrifice one kind of safety for another to survive, including living out in the cold. As Minister of Housing, Addictions and Homelessness, I have the sacred responsibility and duty to make meaningful and lasting progress to ensure that there are fewer people living on the streets and in encampments, and more people living in safe, dignified housing. It is my responsibility, and I have taken that to heart. Since our government was elected just a year ago, we have been hard at work to ensure that we are working towards ending chronic homelessness here in our province of Manitoba. I am proud of the work that we've done, both in the numbers and in the individual stories of those who have been able to share those and the positive impacts that we have made in their lives thus far. Working together with community partners, we have housed more than 1,200 people over the last year. We've invested in new housing projects, and we've helped connect people with the supports that they need to stay housed. But we know that there's much more work to be done, and we feel the weight of that, and we are ready for the task ahead. The Premier outlined our plan to move people from encampments into housing as we continue to work to end chronic homelessness here in our province. This work won't be easy. This work will require significant coordination between the province, the City of Winnipeg, other municipalities experiencing homelessness, as well as community partners. That is why we were thrilled that's why we're thrilled to announce that Tessa Blaikie will be joining us today as the new role of the Premier's Senior Advisor on Ending Chronic Homelessness. Tessa brings years of experience on the front line serving our underhoused community, including most recently as Executive Director of Siloam Mission. Her passion, expertise, and commitment to getting the work done is well recognized right across the sector. Tessa is known for her ability to bring people together and build consensus across differences. We're putting together a strong plan together today to end chronic homelessness. And Tessa will help ensure that the work is coordinated, effective, and lasting. Our plan will meet people where they're at and bring them to safe, healthier, and more dignified housing. Housing people is more than just four walls. On a day like today, with this bitter winter wind, we are reminded that it can be profoundly unsafe to live out on the streets anywhere in our province. Safe housing means warmth, but it also means wraparound mental health, addictions, and social supports. This work is housing people with safety, dignity, and ongoing care for our relatives. And that's what we are thrilled here to announce. And while we are taking the immediate steps to move unsheltered people into housing, we're also continuing our long-term work, addressing the shortage of social and affordable housing and preventing homelessness to make chronic homelessness a thing of the past in our province. All of us deserve a safe and stable place to live. We are doing the work to make this a reality, and together we will create a better Manitoba where no one faces life without a home. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Minister Smith. And I would just like to quickly say, as a lifelong Manitoban, thank you so much for the remarkable work that you're doing in this role. Next up, I would like to call up to the podium His Worship, Mayor Scott Gillingham. Thank you, David.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate your introduction and the acknowledgement, the land acknowledgement as well. This is a great day. Today is a very great day, one that I certainly have been looking forward to for a long, long time. What is being presented here today is a result of many months of conversation and a lot of hard work. Premier Kinew, Minister Smith, and I have had many discussions about moving people from encampments into housing. I know the provincial government was focused on this issue long before they were elected, and so I commend them for that. And at City Hall, encampments and homelessness are constant topics. And across governments, the conversations have been ongoing and been very, very productive. And I want to especially commend the civil servants of both the province of Manitoba and the city of Winnipeg for all of their efforts. Their joint working group has done tremendous work identifying the opportunities, identifying some of perhaps the challenges as well to address homelessness. And their efforts truly behind the scenes have laid the foundation for this plan, this multi-government strategy to end homelessness in Manitoba's history. Ending homelessness is a huge challenge, and I know that for the Premier, Minister Smith, and their government, they feel the same as I do, that we all want to see action immediately. But complicated problems require well-thought-out solutions, and they take time to address. This plan, I believe, is the right approach. And I'm confident that in the weeks and the months ahead, Winnipeggers will start to see meaningful change on our streets, in our parks, on our riverbanks, and in other public spaces. And more importantly, most importantly, those who are unhoused across our city right now will begin to move into housing with the supports they need to provide health and stability to their lives. This is great news for people who are in encampments right now or unsheltered, and it's great news for those who love them. I can tell you personally that as someone who, with extended family members, has seen extended family member struggle with homelessness, addiction, and mental illness, this news, this plan offers hope to hundreds, perhaps thousands of families in our community. The plan has two main goals. First, it takes a systematic but compassionate approach to help people who are right now homeless moving them out of encampments into safe housing with the supports that they need. And second, it aims to restore public spaces as safe, clean, welcoming areas for everyone to use and to enjoy. And I know that both of these goals are fully supported by Winnipeg City Council and I believe a majority of Winnipeggers. And so I want to take a moment to commend Premier Wab Kinew, Minister Smith, for your leadership, for delivering on this initiative. And I want to take a moment also to congratulate Tessa and to welcome her to her new role. I'm very confident that the Premier and Minister Smith have found the right person with the right combination of experience and trust within the community to bring everyone together to lead in this important moment. So congratulations and thank you, Tessa. I want to be very, very clear. The City of Winnipeg is fully committed to supporting this plan. I appreciate the Premier's leadership, Minister Smith's leadership, and so whether it's through the efforts of the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service or bylaw enforcement officers or the CAO's office working with shelters and outreach teams, the Public Works Department, our water waste staff cleaning and rehabilitating encampment sites, we are all in as a city. We will do our part as partners with the province of Manitoba, and again, I thank them for their leadership. In fact, some of the elements of this plan are already reflected in the city's draft budget that we released just before Christmas. For example, our approach to funding mobile outreach teams will move from what it is now to an RFP model that ensures that any future mobile outreach team to receive funding is fully aligned with the provincial plan. Because collaboration is key, and it's critical that everyone's working towards the same goal. For the past couple of years, I've often used the analogy of a dragon boat versus kayaks in the river to address homelessness. Now, I'll be honest, my staff chuckles whenever I pull out the paddle, but they never forget what I'm talking about. We can have several approaches, or we can have one approach. The province has laid out one approach. And I can tell you as a city of Winnipeg, we're going to do our part. We're jumping on board, we're grabbing our seats, we're grabbing our oars, and we're going to do our part in this plan. And so I'm encouraging every other agency and every other potential partner out there that when Tessa comes knocking, say yes, grab your seat in this plan, grab your oar, and let's do this together, because together we can transform lives and we can transform our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mayor Gillingham. Now I would like to call on Tessa Blaikie Whitecloud to say a few words.
Thank you, Premier Kinew, Minister Smith, and Mayor Gillingham. I'm really honored to be taking on this role and working with Minister Smith, whose own experience is such a powerful example of why this work matters and how change can happen over generations when we transform the life of one person. We are all here today to work to end chronic homelessness and to help our fellow Manitobans find their way home. I'm passionate about this work. I've dedicated most of my adult life to it and been working in the sector for over a decade. One of the things that I think is imperative is that we are called to support the most vulnerable in our neighborhoods, in our province, and there is no more important support than having a place to lay your head and build your life. I've had the pleasure of partnering with so many of the great organizations in our sector, doing life-saving work and helping people find their way home over my time in the sector. As I join government, I want to acknowledge all the hard work these direct service organizations are doing right now, this winter, to keep people warm and safe as temperatures drop. This work is perhaps the hardest it's ever been. I know it. I've done it. And yet, this plan gives me hope. Manitobans give me hope. You all have big hearts. I've been able to see that in the generosity that is expressed to organizations like Silo Mission and One Just City, where I've had the opportunity to lead. We all want to see Manitobans housed with dignity and able to thrive, an end to encampments and people sleeping outside. In order to succeed, we have to work together on one plan, and that's what I'm here to help have us do. Drawing on my experience in the sector, I will coordinate a collaborative strategy with the whole sector to help move this plan forward. If we work together, we can do this, and other jurisdictions have done it with similar homeless problems to ours. We can end chronic homelessness in Manitoba. And for every person we house, As I said already, we change not only their life, but the lives of those around them, and all who they go on to help after. Our sector is many people who have lived experience of homelessness and addiction, who have gotten their life on track and turned around and said, now how do I help the next person? I've been able to see folks working in shelters, becoming nurses, or building businesses who I once met in a shelter, who I once met in a drop-in, struggling with addiction, or recently leaving a violent relationship. I've seen people come out of homelessness and do phenomenal things. Is it ambitious to say that we can end chronic homelessness? Yes. But it's no more ambitious than each person currently living in an encampment or currently experiencing homelessness today saying that they can do it. And this plan believes in them. This plan believes in them because it starts with the key need to solve homelessness. Our government is investing in the housing with adequate supports and wraparound services to make sure that housing is the most attractive option and people have an opportunity to move there and thrive. Because this plan starts with housing, we'll begin to address the deficit in social housing that our province is facing and that our city is facing. Winnipeg has 3 social housing units for every 20 low-income people. Regina has 8. Calgary has 9. This plan, starting with housing, and that housing being the housing that is actually needed, is why I believe that this plan will work. I believe we can help Manitobans find their way home, and I am so proud to begin working with a government that is going to make the investments in mental health, in supports, in infrastructure, in those actual housing units to make it possible, and to work with a sector to continue to always put the community first. Thank you very much.
We got the right person for sure. That was awesome.
Thank you so much, Tessa. So that is the end of the speaking portion today. So if there's a Q&A, questions from the media, we'll be taking those now.
Question for the Premier. Just looking for some details on the new housing units. How many properties has the province purchased?
Yeah, we can do that.
Where are they? How many units is that?
So we identified about 300 that will be coming online. These will be coming with supports in the next coming months. We will be working with organizations to support folks based on their needs. Some of those will be in Manitoba Housing, some of those will be in the community, working with partners who are already doing great work in the community. And again, we're building a Made in Manitoba model with the help of Tessa and so many others that are in the community.
And part of the release says that the government is purchasing and renovating several apartment buildings. So just looking for some detail on
We are, and those will be released in the months to come, in the weeks to come, I would say.
So there's an initial 300 built right now, you're saying?
Coming online, yes.
And these apartments are on top of the 300? Or part of it?
Part of the 300. Yes, we have 40 right now through Manitoba Housing, and we're continually turning over units. So when we committed to maintaining, we've been continually, that's part of the 1,200 that we've been able to house folks, and we've been continually putting people into housing.
Minister and Tessa, perhaps explain the concept of supports here, because I've found that over the years, especially talking to those folks that are in encampments, that they are housed, but they find that that housing is not secure, and that there's everything ranging from gang recruitment. What is changing in this to make sure that in some cases you have further Bell Hotel models, in other cases you have the security in place to make sure that those who feel safer in encampments are actually going to feel safer in these housing units?
One of the key pieces is that all of these units that are coming online are social housing units, which means they are either owned by the government, supported by nonprofits for those wraparound services, or they are going to be owned by nonprofits. And the government is going to be supporting, again, those nonprofit services and wraparound supports within that housing. So many folks are housed, and I've been touring some buildings as of late, where they're using a 4x4 to secure their door, and they feel safer outside. But that is not in social housing. That's in private market housing. That is unfortunately often taking taking advantage of people.
Unfortunately, I've been to social housing where that's not the case.
And so
Are there policy changes here to make sure that even public social housing will be a whole lot safer?
So one of the key parts of this plan is actually building in the longer term strategy is building housing first models within Manitoba Housing, and that will include having supports in the building so we can make sure that we create safety in those spaces.
What happens, because we hear this too, that there are people who say, I'm not leaving, I'm not leaving. How do you get everyone out? And so you're able to decommission it? Because we have heard from, the people on the ground that say, I just don't want to leave my account. How do you get those people?
A key part of the strategy is building housing that identifies the populations that are in need of housing that's specific to them and their needs. So we're going to make that supportive housing the most attractive option. And so that's by working with folks in encampments. What does that support look like? What does it need to look like for you to move there? And then doing that work with the charity partners that are coming alongside us in order to develop housing that says, well, actually, yeah, that's exactly where I want to live. It is engaging people with lived experience in the actual planning of the infrastructure. It is ensuring that folks have 2SLGBQ housing if that's where they need to be to feel safe. Indigenous women's only housing if that's where they need to be feel safe. Access to detox and support services for treatment as soon as they're ready. And so a big part of this is about making sure that we are building the solutions. That could look like more congregant housing. It also can look like moving an entire encampment into housing together so they don't lose that sense of street family. This plan is starting from a perspective of compassion, building up what people say that they need to move into housing, and then making sure that they have an opportunity to take that attractive choice.
So we're standing in an area where, last I checked, there was an encampment just not very far away from here. Can you help us understand how you would go about the conversations that you have, because this is all part of dignity, that you have with those members of the encampments to move them out, move them into safe housing? This is an interesting site because during the summer you can have a beverage here and then you can look out and hear what's going on. Walk us through that process, because it's not something that you succeed with in a matter of days or weeks. It will take months. And there's very high expectations here, but you're going to have some failures. And then ultimately, how do you track that? How do you determine success?
So I think one of the biggest reasons that these conversations have been really difficult is because we're asking folks to move from encampments without having any housing options for them to move into, and without those housing options being planned with their specific needs in mind. And so we have been crying as a sector to say the solution to homelessness is housing units. The solution to homelessness obviously is prevention, and that will be part of the work that I know the government's already doing that I'll be joining in on. But it's also really about making sure that those units actually exist. Right now, every month, there's an average of 100 units available at an affordable, deeply affordable rate. And there are roughly 3,500 people competing for those units in our city. So this plan starts with the units. That's going to make those conversations easier, because I'm not saying, hey, what do you want your housing to look like? It doesn't exist. We're saying we're bringing this housing online. We're doing the work of consulting with the partners bringing that housing online to say, who are you in conversation with in encampments? What does that housing need to look like? Let's start with those people that we've already talked to and move them into the housing that makes sense for them to thrive for the long term, to get that second chance, and to be able to give back to our community.
Madame Blaikie Whitecloud, peut-être revenir en français sur quelle est votre fonction, quel est votre rôle maintenant avec le gouvernement?
Donc, je commence le 2 février, puis je vais être l'advisor senior à la première pour aux fins de la situation d'intolérance chronique à Manitoba.
Après, M. Kinew, peut-être revenir sur les investissements, les logements, peut-être les détails, les chiffres reliés à l'annonce d'aujourd'hui. Voilà le nombre.
Bien, pour ce processus engagé avec ceux qui habitent sans abri, il y a 20 millions de dollars. Et ça, c'est plutôt un investissement dans les peuples. Mais dans le budget de 2024, pour cette année, il y a déjà 116 millions de dollars d'investissement dans des logements sociaux et puis abordables. Alors, c'est une lutte où il y a beaucoup d'investissements tout partout dans le gouvernement, c'est-à-dire dans le système de santé, pour les services santé mentale, pour les logements abordables. Et puis aujourd'hui, nous sommes ici pour annoncer que nous embauchons un champion pour le secteur qui va nous aider d'engager avec la communauté. Et puis, en même temps, un autre 20 millions de dollars pour investissez dans les besoins pour les équipes qui vont travailler avec eux qui habitent sans abri.
Et en termes de logement, c'est, in terms of housing, units,
Oh, 300. Yeah. Alors maintenant, jusqu'à aujourd'hui, on voit 40 chez Manitoba Housing, mais c'est un processus avec plusieurs étapes. C'est-à-dire, l'équipe va engager, Tessa et puis les autres vont engager avec ceux qui habitent sans-abri, et puis vont aller à ce qu'on appelle un NAV Center, comme une première étape. Et puis après ça, il y a comme 2 édifices spécifiquement qu'on va utiliser comme transitional housing. Et puis après ça, Manitoba Housing et puis les autres options. Mais, comme elle a décrit, c'est vraiment un processus de créer une destination où ceux qui habitent sans abri maintenant vont prendre le choix de déménager dans des logements, les options que nous sommes en train de créer. Yeah, sorry, Jeff. I'll just go with the first one here. So the investment we're announcing today is we're creating Tessa's position as a senior advisor on ending chronic homelessness and a $20 million commitment over 2 years. This $20 million is specifically about the people, most of it, right? Like the people are going to go out and do the engagement and talk to people about their options and say, like, we have housing that's dignified and it's tailored to the sort of community that you want to live in, and it's much, much better than living in a tent. Beyond that, the budget this year, we have $116 million in housing investments. We've got billions that we're investing in health. So today we're talking about a very specific, discrete allocation of dollars that is going to support Tessa's work directly. But it's really important to see that within the broader context of all the housing money that we're pushing out the door, all the investments in mental health and addictions, everything from the Anoak Recovery Center to the sort of maybe more street-level outreach teams that we've been partnering on with DCSP and the city and us both investing in those resources together. And then, of course, with the investments in healthcare. So this really is, among the other roles that we've discussed for Tessa, is working with the sector and ensuring that we bring everybody together in the city and the partners with other municipalities as well. But it's also about working across government. The first action that we took was creating Minister Smith's portfolio, Housing, Addictions, and Homelessness, which put Manitoba Housing and then the wraparound supports of mental health and addictions together in one branch of government. And now, as we move forward into the hitting the streets and going camp to camp stage of this plan, Tessa is going to be the quarterback of that strategy and ensuring along the way that, okay, we need something out of justice, we need something out of health, we need something out of the families department, case may be. We're not going to let any barrier between government departments get in our way here. We're going to ensure that we're working with the people who need help and finding that ability for them to be successful. And for us, success is staying in housing for the longer term instead of ending up back on the street again.
The people going door to door, the people going from tent to tent rather.
Yeah.
And are these new hires or the existing staff?
It's a mix. It's a mix. Yeah, you've got a lot of folks who are already in the space as well in DCSP. You know, you've seen us standing at podiums before, making those investments, and we're talking about adding dozens more staff over the coming months to help complement those existing resources. But I also want to say, like, there's been a bit of a learning journey for myself here too. When I was talking about tent to tent before, folks in the sector have helped me to understand that it's not about tent to tent, it's about camp to camp. Because what happens when you go tent to tent, and this is where I had to, expand my mind a little bit, is you tend to cherry pick the people who are going to be easiest to make successful in housing. But you really have to go across the whole camp. And that's why we're saying we're going to take 30 days to go to every tent in an existing encampment and make sure that those folks can move out of that space, because otherwise you're just going to maybe move a few people that you've cherry picked out of that camp, and then the camp is still going to be there in the park or under the bridge or under the riverbank, which is not what we want to see. At the end of that 30-day period, we want people to be moving from there into a more permanent housing situation. In addition to the housing units, and again, this is probably going to be the vast majority of people who we're trying to move into first the navigation center, and then transitional housing, and then to either social housing or the market, what have you. We also have something called flex funding. So for some folks, they're stranded in Winnipeg. And the barrier to them being housed again is a ticket home. So if that's the barrier, let's not let the cost of a plane ticket or a bus ticket stand in the way of somebody making your way home, to use the title of the document here. So really, it's going to be a tailored approach. We're going to come into a camp and we'll say, all right, folks, 30 days, we're going to be working with you. We want to find what you see as a step forward in your life. And for the folks who it's getting a housing unit and some addictions help, it's getting into a housing unit and being able to access mental health supports or maybe meds or whatever it is, we'll work with you on that. But if you just need to get a plane ticket or a bus ticket or a ride somewhere, we'll help you with that too. And the idea is to just work together across all the levels and partners and the service providers to ensure that we're saying we as a society have decided that living in a tent is not what we want to see anymore. And the way, grounded in compassion, that we're going to do that is by making the next step out of a tent easy and attractive for the folks who are living there.
The document today talks about after this is done, preventing an encampment from being reestablished. And what does that look like? What's involved there?
Do you want to talk about this? Or
Sure.
Should I? Yeah? Okay.
I think a key part of that is making sure that there's a full cleanup of that site, and so the city already has a pilot project actually getting peers to support that work. If folks are still there, but then after the fact, being really prompt in tidying up an encampment and making sure that it returns to public use if it's in a park space or a city space. So it's really about being really proactive. So we know at the beginning of this plan that we're working with folks on a housing solution, and that we're going to have move-in dates. We're going to have a setup. We're going to have a package, because our nonprofit partners do that to move somebody into their apartment. We know when moving day is, and so the city knows when cleaning day is. And so to make sure that that is seamless. And so it's really about upping that collaboration between our governments and sector partners to ensure that we have the possibility to say, you've moved, and the encampment is tidied up almost instantaneously.
And is there anything to prevent other people from moving in and setting up an encampment?
I think a big part of that is the continued work that outreach workers are going to continue to do. So once an encampment has been decommissioned, they're going to continue to return to that site, see if other people are popping up. What does that look like? Can we get you to the navigation center? Can we get you supports? And this flex funding is a key part of that. In my career, having access to flex funding, very little at the beginning, a lot more actually under this provincial government, we have been able to solve people's homelessness sometimes before it even starts. And so as something starts to look like it's resurfacing, we can jump in there to say, what would it look like to solve your homelessness today? And that's a person-centered option, right? The flex funding doesn't say it has to be a bus ticket. It says, what does it look like? And so for us, just putting on a different hat for a second from the sector, I know that at Salem Mission, we've paid somebody's car insurance, and then they didn't lose their job, and then they could get their apartment back because their landlord actually didn't want to lose them. They just hadn't paid rent in 2 months, right? And so it is about making sure that we have a way to respond to individuals' needs rapidly, as well as a collaborative approach to make sure that after an encampment has that opportunity to move into housing that works for them, that we're cleaning up that site and that we're keeping on top of it.
Mayor Gillingham, in the past you've said from the city's perspective that there's probably enough money in the system. It's just that the way that you all get into the dragon boat together. Moving to an RFP process on this, what exactly does that mean?
Well, right now the City of Winnipeg we do provide, as a partner, we do provide funding to mobile outreach organizations, or organizations that do mobile outreach. So they're going from encampment to encampment, or they're going from transit shelter to transit shelter where people are living in, and trying to connect them with services. What's really important now is, because the province is now rolling out this plan, which we as a city are full partners in and fully committed to, I think it's very important that our funding that we provide to agencies, that are participating in this plan and aligning themselves with this plan. And so the mobile outreach funding the City of Winnipeg does provide, we're extending that until March of this year, March of 2025, at which point we'll go to an RFP process, and those agencies that want to bid on being a mobile outreach provider can bid, but one of the conditions will be that they're fully participating in this plan.
And in the past, we've done stories where you've had one organization that was a bit more aggressive than another, and frankly, different approaches. What you're here today to say is there's going to be one approach, and that approach is getting people out of camps and into housing.
Yeah, I think that the approach that's been laid out and the document that the Premier, Minister Smith, today have unveiled is very clear. It's one plan. I think, with the hiring of Tessa, I'm fully confident because, again, of her network and years of experience within the sector. She's got a lot of those relationships already established to help agencies and entities become full participants and join into the plan.
Minister, can I ask a clarification question? You had said that 300 is 300 units. This says several apartment buildings. Can you give us an idea of how many apartment buildings that the province is purchasing and renovating?
You'll have more details as they come online. We're just negotiating right now, so I can't give you exact numbers right now. But there'll be a number of units coming online as we're working with partners to make sure that we have supports for folks.
And 300 you already have?
Up to 300.
Well, you already have.
We're working towards that, yeah. And again, this plan is dependent on making sure that we have housing as Tessa had outlined. So we're working towards making sure that people have the supports but have the housing, and that's why this plan is so successful, because we've been working towards making sure that the housing. We had a government 7.5 years that sold off housing, that didn't put the supports in place to ensure that people had the supports to stay successfully housed. We've been working towards making sure that we've been investing in housing, working with the sector, and working towards a plan to make sure that people have the supports to stay housed, and this is working towards that. And we will have more details about those in the coming weeks, and Tessa will be sharing those.
So what mechanisms are in place to ensure that, as people are making this transition from, say, an encampment to affordable housing and potentially market-based housing, that they're not falling through the cracks in the system, sort of keeping track of people as they're making this transition?
Yeah, so a key part of supporting folks that are experiencing homelessness is called casework. And one of the significant pieces, as mentioned, of this investment is in actually the people doing the work. So all the way from that outreach worker, whatever nonprofit they're working with, supporting those folks, building that relationship, getting them into a housing solution that has the wraparound supports that they need. We call it a warm handoff. So doing the work of transitioning with that person. So that is normally for up to 2 years, that outreach worker will stay connected to that person, even if they're in supportive housing. And then once they're in supportive housing, they also transfer to another person's caseload. And so it is about having the infrastructure, the human resources to say, how are we making sure that we're walking people through until they're successful? And really beautifully, we see it all the time, that once they get successful, maybe finish their GED or whatever else was in their way, they turn around and decide to come back and are phenomenal caseworkers. So it will be about building people up so they can build up their community moving forward. And that's an important piece of the long-term strategy.
Madame Blaikie Whitecloud, est-ce que vous demeurez avec Céline Michel? Est-ce que vous demeurez en poste?
Non, je suis fini là le 31 janvier.
Donc après ça, c'est full-time job pour...
Oui. Yeah.
Premier, as we sit here, I'm getting texts from people suggesting and saying, ask the Premier about Mr. Giffen at a health sciences center, because here is a situation where a middle-aged person with all sorts of struggles went in, and there's an investigation going into death. But from the providers that have been texting me, they have said, ask the Premier this, because in the larger context, Tessa Blaikie Whitecloud, Minister, you get it. But there are other components of the system that are so overwhelmed that I'm not saying they don't get it, but I'm saying that they don't get it because life is too busy for them. And so that this takes a community, does it not, to be able to address this? And it's not just about homelessness, but it's the people that are, during the summer, having a beverage here, but also the people that are in our hospital emergency rooms that at times feel overwhelmed. Talk about that, sir, because that's the core of this, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about people, and specifically there's one person and his family that are in my thoughts when you pose the question. When somebody like Mr. Giffen, or any of us as Manitobans, goes to an emergency room, you go there to get well, not to pass away. And that's the tragedy of his personal experience. So I had the opportunity to speak to his sister, Ronna Lee, last week, and first and foremost expressed those condolences on behalf of the province and all the people of Manitoba. And I think what I heard back was a very reasonable and understandable set of questions that any of us would have if this happened to one of our loved ones. And you're talking about a family that probably most people in Manitoba could relate to, and they had the one brother, son who went down a certain path, and it caused them a lot of heartache. And nobody in that situation should ever be in front of the media during the time of grief. So my heart really goes out to them, and we committed to them. They're going to find out before the media finds out these questions. I don't have information that I can share with you today as a result of both that commitment to the family, but also the ongoing investigation under the medical examiner's office. But I think we all recognize that we want better from emergency department wait times in this province. The people who show up for work on a given day are doing heroic work. We are like in awe of the nurses and physicians and support workers and allied health professionals who go to work each and every day. And our message to you has been very clear that help is coming. And we've added health resources to the front lines in emergency departments across the province. We've opened new emergency departments that were closed over the past few years. And we're continuing to make those investments. But I think, Mr. Giffen's experience and his death are a crystallizing moment for us to say that there's even greater urgency. There's a need to learn from what took place here to see what we need to course correct or what flexibility we need to show when it comes to our progress in fixing healthcare. And really importantly, and I hope the people across Manitoba understand this and why it's important to have a government that takes a comprehensive view of things, a big picture approach. If you want to see progress inside the emergency department, the things that happen outside the emergency department are important as well. Which is to say that we need to ensure that you have the nurses and the healthcare staff working inside the emergency department. And this is all about people. This is about training more, recruiting more, retaining more. But the second you step outside of the ED at HSC and you see the condition of the inner city, you know that we have to take action on housing and poverty and education for kids in the next generation so that they could stay on a more positive path. So we're taking action there too. And as this strategy that we're outlining today gets stood up and Manitobans see the progress, I want you to see the progress in terms of the bus shelters. That's a shared priority with the mayor. The public parks. I want you, again, that simple pride test of driving up and down Main Street, I want you to see progress there. But also, importantly, for the first responders, of which MLA Pankratz was talking about, there will be another destination other than the emergency department as these services get stood up. There will be another service that you can turn to. Rather than going to the emergency department with somebody in distress or somebody who needs mental health and addiction supports. So this really is about a comprehensive approach. And I would love it if we could snap our fingers and have all these changes accomplished overnight. But the reality is that it's taken us years to get here, and you probably think, oh, he's going to go into the contrast against the previous government. Like, yeah, absolutely, there's plenty of blame to go there. But the thing that got to us at the situation with homelessness is generations in the making. Yeah. Some of the people that we see at a 190 site are products of the child welfare system because of their parents' experience in the 60s scoop and their grandparents' experience in the residential schools. Other folks have experienced tremendous trauma, or early childhood poverty, or they've had an injury on the job and then were introduced to painkillers or what have you. And you have all these different diverse approaches, but they all converge on our streets across Manitoba. And so if you want to see progress on homelessness, if you want to see progress on emergency rooms, if you want to see progress on making our streets safer, some part of the solution is addressing the root causes. And so we're committed to those things too. So that's why in all the questions about how much does this cost and this and that, it's like, yeah, for sure there's specific discrete answers, but you have to take in mind the bigger picture that we're accomplishing or moving towards being able to deliver on. And that happens in health, that happens in education, and it happens in this work of housing addictions and homelessness as well too.
So I have time for two more.
In emergency departments, one of the things we're hearing from doctors is that that's the last place where people can go and they know they won't be turned away, and that the problems with emergency rooms being crowded and overcrowded often asked to do it, people who have nowhere else to go or nowhere where they feel safe. Is there anything that your government can do now to lessen some of that strain on ERs from people who are unsheltered or don't feel safe going to shelters?
Okay, I've got a brand new hire who's really eager to answer this question, and I'm happy to provide further detail.
So part of the response that the provincial government has already funded is making sure that there is an additional space overnight. So there is a winter overnight warming center. It's seeing over 100 people almost every night, and it's an alternative for folks instead of ending up at an emergency room. And so the government funded that. It has been open since mid-December. And so one of the challenges with this notion that people are going to emergency rooms because they're experiencing being unsheltered was a lot of folks going to emergency rooms because they're being unsheltered is because they are unwell. Experiencing homelessness is very difficult for folks. You have people that are living in shelters that are trying to get home care in a shelter environment with 146 other people sharing the space. You have people that are trying to access services, to access medication, who can't get that medication or keep their medication on them because of the challenges of living on the street. And so there are already alternatives to people who are unsheltered using spaces like emergency rooms. They are available because our government made that investment. But moreover, people who are experiencing life unsheltered also need health care and are often in emergency rooms for legitimate reasons. And so I think part of the big piece of this plan that is going to do great work is that it's a lot easier to get home care in your home. It's a lot easier to have access to primary care and understand your plans to stay well when you have supportive housing and a caseworker who attends doctor's appointments with you, much as I have done for seniors in my own family. And so a big part of this is to ensure that people have the housing to stay well, and this notion that people that are experiencing an unsheltered life are currently, filling up emergency rooms, I would push back against, because we know I've sent people in an ambulance to an emergency room with a heart attack. I've sent people in an ambulance to an emergency room with angina. I've sent people to an emergency room being a frontline staff. And so they deserve that healthcare and they need that healthcare, and the government has already invested in alternatives to say you can go here and people can call 211 and get set up, and outreach workers are taking folks to the winter overnight warming center that happens to be located at Salem.
Premier, a new question.
All right.
Are you going to be relying on staff from sort of the nonprofit agencies, from the city, from the province? Like, who will be doing this?
Yeah, so the people who have the strongest relationship with folks are the people who can make the strongest impact. And so we'll be working with providers as well as investing in new providers, or the same providers to have more staff in order to be able to build up those relationships, figure out what that housing needs to look like, and work with folks to access it.
Premier, a new question about tomorrow's meeting with the Prime Minister and the other premiers. Premier Ford has suggested that 500,000 jobs are at stake and that they're focusing in on critical minerals and potentially electricity. What's Manitoba's plan in this area? You've been rather vague on this, but now you have other premiers that are coming out with specifics. What specifics can you offer as you meet with the other premiers and the Prime Minister tomorrow as far as Manitoba's strategy is concerned?
Well, it's Manitoba first. Your job is the most important job to me. And our economy here in the province is the most important economy to me. And I think we're going to roll out a whole host of initiatives that are about building up our economy here at home. I think you've seen us announce a bunch of investments that are about building up the advanced manufacturing sector here in Manitoba. And I think as we go into the Premier's meeting with the Prime Minister tomorrow in Ottawa and the inauguration of President-elect Trump next week, the economy is going to be top of mind for everybody. And it always is. The cost of living has been huge. And so our commitment is to fight for your jobs. Our commitment is to ensure that through a period of political turbulence and economic uncertainty, that we protect your job and your ability to provide for your family.
Are you in favor of retaliatory tariffs and blocking energy exports?
Sorry, I didn't hear the second half of your question there.
Blocking energy exports. Does Ford says maybe, Danielle Smith said no, go away.
Well, a tariff is a tax, okay? So if you put a tax in place on the average person, it's going to make life more expensive. If, Trump puts in a tariff tax in America, Americans are going to see their lives get more expensive. So I'd ask the average Manitoban, do you want to see your life get more expensive? And so I'm going to head into the meeting with the Prime Minister and the other premiers tomorrow, standing up for you standing up for the cost of living that we've been fighting so hard to make a little bit more affordable here in Manitoba since taking office. And we don't want to give up those little bit of gains that we've been able to make by slowing down inflation here in Manitoba. And of course, jobs, 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 protecting your work along the way, because all this great, investments in social and homelessness and healthcare and stuff like that, that only happens if we have people in the mines and in the manufacturing plants and on the farms and in the transportation sector working and helping to power the economy, right? And so the economic horse pulls the social cart, and we got to ensure that there's a steady hand on the reins of the economy right now. A lot of uncertainty at the federal level. Again, a lot of speculation about what's going to happen south of the border, but there's a steady hand on the reins when it comes to the economic horse here in Manitoba.
In light of the waiting room that Premier, the overcrowding in ERs,
We lost a light there for the record.
is it appropriate to be advertising, touting your government's accomplishments in healthcare, considering that we're still so far?
Well, the facts of healthcare are important for the average Manitoban to understand, and that is that there are more people working on the front lines today than there were a year ago. There are also more services available in the emergency department, and there are more emergency rooms open today than there were a year and a half ago. And, when you have the media and public interest in a situation like the one that we've seen, it's important for you to ask the accountability questions. And some part of the answers to accountability questions are the progress that we've delivered to date. Have we fixed healthcare? We're making progress is the answer. And so I'm sharing information about the investments that we've made so that you understand that if 1 year of adding 1,000 healthcare workers is something that we've accomplished so far, then perhaps there's some reassurance that at the end of 4 years, you'll be able to see that much more progress towards the number one issue in health, which is staffing. And so absolutely, we've got to continue to ensure that there's communication with the public, because it is terrible to see a tragedy like the death that we've seen here. At the same time, we need to be able to send a message to those on the front lines and the patients who rely on healthcare services that there are important forms of help coming, and that the days of, endless frustrations, I hope, are coming to a close, and the days of us working together to make a healthcare system that we're all proud of are here. All right.
Thank you.
I just want to say one more thing, specifically to the people who are out there on the streets. I know life is hard. I can only imagine the various life circumstances that has brought you to being, out here on these streets. But I want to say, the mayor, Tessa, Bernie, the first responders like Dave, we're here for you, and we want to help you find your way home. And again, we're not expecting you to change everything in your life overnight, but we're here extending the hand to help you out. Let's get you out of a tent. Let's get you on a path to success. And like we say, let's help you find your way home. Miigwech, merci. Thank you very much.
Thank you.